We're studying what the effects of lower future income will be, and we just finished looking at the market for goods today. There, the key insight was that lower future income won't have any effect on the quantity of goods supplied today, but it will have an effect by lowering wealth initially on the demand for goods today. Now we're going to move to the market for goods in the future. We want to remember that the demand for current goods is just the mirror image of savings. And savings affects the supply and demand for future goods. Now, the big difference when we go to looking at the market for future goods is we're actually going to get a shift down in the supply of future goods, whereas we had no shift in the supply for current goods. Okay, so future income is going to fall from YF1 to YF2. The supply of goods in the future depends only on YF, so it's going to shift in from the level at YF1 to the level at YF2. This lower wealth is going to reduce the demand for goods in the future. Consumers want to try to smooth their consumption, so demand is going to fall by less than supply. Now, one thing to remember is that when you're in the market for goods in the future, the relative price that is on the axis is the inverse of the real interest rate. So what we're going to end up with is at the initial real interest rate of R1, there's going to be an excess demand. Consumers would like to borrow today in order to raise their consumption in the future, because that's where income is going to be lower. As all consumers try to do this, the price of future goods is going to rise, and so 1 over 1 plus R will go up to 1 over 1 plus R2. And this has to happen until consumers are happy consuming that lower quantity of goods supplied under YF2. And here's what the picture is going to look like. We have 1 over 1 plus R as the relative price. And down here we have future goods, which is just YF. So initially we're in an equilibrium at point A, where the supply of goods in the future is YF1, and the interest rate that clears the market is R1. We get the shift in the supply of goods in the future, because that's the thought experiment that's going on, is we have a reduction in future goods. And at that initial interest rate, we now have an excess demand for goods in the future. So what that's going to do is it's going to drive up the interest rate, and as the interest rate goes up, 1 over the interest rate gets lower, and so you slide up this new demand curve. Now, why is there a new demand curve in the first place? Well, because the demand for goods in the future depends on the interest rate, current income, and future income. And at the initial interest rate, there's been a decline in wealth. And therefore, you get the shift in demand from the blue curve to the red curve. So there are two effects going on in this market in the future. There's the effect of a shift in the demand curve, and there's an effect of the shift in the supply curve, which then induces movement along that new demand curve from point C to point B.